Welcome back to us Mint Mysteries, where every old coin in your drawer, every jar in your garage, and every box in your attic might be hiding a life-changing secret. Today, we're diving into 6 Kennedy half dollars that look ordinary, but a few small details could turn them into treasures worth more than a brand new truck, a luxury vacation, or even a full year of retirement income. And the craziest part, these rare pieces often slip right through people's hands without anyone noticing. Now, let's start with the coin most people overlook, the 1985 Kennedy half dollar. At first glance, this coin looks modern, common, and almost too normal to be worth anything. But that's exactly why this year is so sneaky. The value hides in the tiny details. And if you happen to have one in extra fine condition like the one we're looking at right now, buckle up, because this coin is not playing around. Most folks don't even realize that the 1985 half dollar wasn't released into general circulation in large numbers. The US Mint was still recovering from the coin shortage of the early 1980s, so production was lower, and most of the high-quality pieces went directly into mint sets. That means a genuinely extra fine example found in the wild today is already a step above what most collectors ever get to see. Look closely at the details on Kennedy's hair. In extra fine condition, you can still see the raised strands lightly worn, but clear and sharp enough to show the original sculpting. On worn coins, this area turns smooth like melted wax, but not here. The cheek, jawline, and collar still have definition. Even the mint mark under the neck shows a bold strike. That's the kind of sharpness collectors crave, because it tells them the coin lived a gentle life. Now, here's where things get exciting, because even though the 1985 half dollar is a clad coin, not silver, the rare high-grade survivors can sell for shocking prices. A normal circulated one might only be worth pocket change, but an extra fine example? Now, we're entering a completely different world. Collectors are hunting top-tier 1985 half dollars, because the population of uncirculated pieces is surprisingly small. And when coins become hard to find in high grade, values jump fast. An extra fine example can reach around $250 to $600, depending on eye appeal. But if you somehow discover a near mint or fully uncirculated piece hiding in old family collections, that's when we start talking about $1,500, $3,000, even $7,500 for the highest quality certified coins. That's already crazy for a coin most people ignore. But here's where the true shock value kicks in. A very small number of 1985 Kennedy halves, and I mean extremely rare, were struck with dramatic errors. A double die obverse, an off-center strike, or a clipped planchet can skyrocket the price instantly. One known example, with a severe off-center strike, sold for over $25,000, and experts believe that an ultra-rare, perfectly preserved error, if it ever surfaces, could easily break $100,000 or more. Imagine turning a regular-looking 1985 coin into a 6-figure treasure just because of a tiny mint mistake. That's the kind of jackpot that keeps collectors awake at night. So, how do you know if your 1985 Kennedy could be valuable? First, check for strong luster or shine. Even in extra fine condition, the coin should have a bright, healthy glow. Look for clean rims, no heavy scratches, and details in the hair and lettering. Then check for errors, doubling, misaligned edges, thick rims, missing design elements. And of course, if the coin looks unusually sharp or unusually strange, that's your clue to get it graded. Moving on, let's take a look at a coin that almost no one expects to be valuable, the 1983 Kennedy half dollar. Now, this one is special in a way most collectors don't even realize. If you've got an extra fine example like the one we're examining right now, your heart might start beating a little faster, because the 1983 half dollar carries one of the strangest and most surprising stories in modern US coinage. Here's the part most people don't know. 1983 was the year of the Great Mint Set Drought. The US Mint didn't produce traditional uncirculated sets that year. That means almost all 1983 Kennedy halves were released straight into circulation, where they were spent, scratched, abused, dropped, and worn down into the ground. Finding one today that still shows sharp details in the hairline, clean lettering, and a strong strike on Kennedy's profile, that's something seasoned collectors get excited about. Look closely at your extra fine example. See how the cheek still has curve and depth. How the hair above the ear still has separation and strands. That's impressive for 1983. Look at the rims, not flat, not chewed up, still crisp. The mint mark is bold and the fields aren't heavily scratched. This is exactly the kind of condition that rises far above the typical surviving 1983 $50. Now, it's talk value. And this is where things get electrifying. Normal circulated 1983 $50 worth maybe $1, $2 if you're lucky, but an extra fine example? That opens the door to real collector attention. These can sell for $40, $60, even $120, depending on overall eye appeal. But here's where the shock hits hard, because the 1983 Kennedy $50 is one of the low population sleepers in higher grades. If you ever find an uncirculated example, which is extremely rare because of that mint set, gap values explode. Some Ms. 65 and Ms. 66 certified examples have reached $1,500, $3,000, even $5,000. And the highest graded pieces, the ones that show nearly perfect luster and a flawless strike, those have pushed into the $10,000 to $20,000 range, and experts believe a new record could go above $35,000 if the right coin surfaces. But the real monsters, the jaw-droppers, are the error coins, because the 1980s were a rough time at the mint. There are known examples of 1983 halves struck off center, double struck, broad struck, or with major die breaks. A dramatic off-center strike can easily pull $2,500 to $6,000. A double-struck piece with visible overlapping images? That's in the $15,000 to $40,000 range. And the rarest pieces, the large die crack, lightning strike, errors could break $100,000 if a high-grade example ever hits the market. That's why collectors hunt 1983 halves like treasure. Most are worn out. Most are damaged. Most barely survive the 1980s. But if you've got one in extra fine condition, you're already in the top tier. You're holding a survivor from a very strange year in US mint history, a year when good examples simply weren't supposed to exist. So check the fields, check the rims, check the hair detail, and always keep an eye out for anything unusual. Because the 1983 Kennedy $50 might look simple, but its value hides in plain sight, waiting for someone who knows exactly what clues to look for. Now, let's move on to a year that hardly anyone talks about, the 1993 Kennedy $50. And honestly, that's exactly what makes this coin so dangerous for collectors who aren't paying attention. Because this year hides one of the biggest condition traps in the entire Kennedy series. If you've got an extra fine example like the one we're looking at right now, then get ready. Because your coin is already beating the odds. Most people don't realize the early 1990s were a rough period for the $50. The coin wasn't used in daily circulation anymore. Banks rarely ordered them, and the few that did leave the mint were tossed into drawers, used in casinos, or moved through vending machine companies where they suffered heavy wear. That means most 1993 halves look dull, scratched, and worn almost flat. But an extra fine example? That's something collectors snap up fast. Take a close look at your coin's profile. The jawline still has shape. The cheek hasn't flattened out. The hair above Kennedy's ear still shows waves and separation. Even the lettering "Liberty, in God We Trust" remains bold and clear. And the rims, crisp without heavy dents. That's exactly the level of detail that pushes this coin far above the typical surviving examples. And here's what makes 1993 even more interesting. The mint didn't produce circulation quality sets that preserve these in high grade. Most of the beautifully struck pieces went straight into collector sets and never hit the public. But extra fine condition pieces that survived outside of sets, those are much tougher to find. And when something is harder to find, collectors start to pay big. A typical circulated 1993 $50 might be worth only 50 cents to $1, but an extra fine example already pulls attention, reaching around $15 to $40, sometimes more if the luster is strong. But if someone finds a truly sharp, well-preserved, uncirculated example, values climb into $150, $300, even $600. But here's the real surprise, the shock factor that makes collectors lean forward and stare. The 1993 Kennedy half-dollar has one of the lowest populations of perfect or near-perfect coins in the entire 1990 to 1999 decade. High-grade certified examples can explode into the thousands. Ms. 67 pieces have sold for $1,000 to $2,500. Ms. 68 examples? Those have crossed $10,000, $15,000, even hitting $20,000 when the strike and luster come together just right. And experts believe a flawless Ms. 69, one ever appears could break $50,000 to $75,000. But wait, because the real monsters from this year are the mint errors. The early 90s were full of mechanical problems at the mint, and 1993 shows some of the strangest mistakes. Collectors have found broad strikes, die clashes, double dies, and even off-center strikes that look like the coin slipped during minting. A strong off-center strike can easily reach $3,000 to $7,000. A dramatic double strike with two visible heads overlapping could bring $15,000 to $30,000. And the rarest category, the full wrong planchet errors, where a 1993 half-dollar was accidentally struck on a quarter blank. That's where values hit the high six figures. A clean, high-grade wrong planchet strike could push $100,000 to $250,000, maybe even more if it's the only known example. Now, let's move on to a year that slipped right past almost everyone. The 2001 Kennedy half-dollar. And I'm telling you right now, this date is one of the biggest hidden traps in the entire series. People think the modern years don't matter. They think the 2000s are too common, too new, too boring. But that's exactly why the 2001 half-dollar can hit so unexpectedly hard. Because behind that simple, shiny surface is one of the lowest mintage surprises of the last 4 decades. Here's the shocker most folks never realize. The 2001 Kennedy half-dollar was the last year the mint released half-dollars into general circulation. After 2001, the mint stopped sending them to banks. That means 2001 is the final year before the big circulation shutdown. And this created a strange collector shortage no one saw coming. Now, it's talk about your extra fine example. If you've got one in this condition, you're already way ahead of the game. Look at Kennedy's cheek, it still has curve and depth, not flattened. Look closely at the jawline and the shadow under the chin. Notice how the hair above the forehead still shows the original sculpted waves. The rim is sharp, the lettering is bold, and the coin still carries that soft, original mint glow even with light wear. That's impressive, because most 2001 halves never even made it into people's hands. They sat in storage bins, rolled bags, or bank boxes until the mint pulled the plug on circulation. And now here comes the fun part. The value. A typical worn 2001 half-dollar might only sell for $1 or $2. But an extra fine example, especially one with strong detail, can reach $8, $12, even $25, depending on eye appeal. That's already surprising for a modern clad half-dollar. But wait, because this is where things get crazy fast. Since 2001 is a final year circulation coin, high-grade examples are in short supply. And when the mint cut off circulation release, collectors began to panic. Hunt for perfect specimens. This pushed the top end of the market into shocking territory. A sharp uncirculated 2001 half-dollar can reach $75, $150, even $300 if certified. But the truly high-grade pieces, the Ms. 66 and Ms. 67 examples with powerful luster, those jump into the $1,000 to $3,500 range. And the ultra-rare Ms. 68 examples? That's where we hit jaw-dropping numbers. These pieces can explode into $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000, because the population count is extremely low. and experts believe that if a single flawless Ms. 69 ever shows up, it could easily smash $50,000 to $100,000 just because of scarcity. Now, let's talk about the monsters. The 2001 mint errors. This year produced some incredible mistakes. Off-center strikes, wrong planchets, double-struck coins, and even the highly coveted die adjustment strikes where the image looks lightly ghosted because the press misfired. A bold off-center strike can hit $2,500 to $6,000. A double-struck piece, especially one with the second strike fully visible, can reach $15,000 to $25,000. And a wrong planchet error at 2001 half struck on a quarter blank or a foreign planchet easily pushes $75,000 to $200,000. Sometimes more for perfect eye appeal. Collectors call the 2001 Kennedy half dollar the silent sleeper, a coin that hides in plain sight. A coin most people walk right past without knowing it marks the end of an era. And when a final year coin becomes scarce and high grade, that's when the price jumps from surprising to unbelievable. Next up, let's travel back to a year that quietly slipped into millions of pockets, but almost never in high-grade condition. The 1979 Kennedy half dollar. Now, don't let the date fool you. Coins from the late 70s might seem common, ordinary, even boring to some collectors, but the truth is far more shocking. Because the 1979 half dollar holds one of the biggest condition traps of the entire series. And a fine condition example like the one we're looking at right now may actually be hiding some very surprising potential. The late 1970s were not kind to half dollars. These coins were heavily used in casinos, vending machines, and circulation routes, where they were tossed around like workhorses. Most of them lost their sharp details fast. Rims became flat, hairlines disappeared, cheeks were worn smooth. By the time they made it to collectors decades later, the vast majority looked completely exhausted, but your 1979 example, even in fine condition, still stands taller than most. Take a good look. The hairline above Kennedy's ear is worn, but not completely gone. The cheek still has shape. The jawline, even though softened, hasn't melted into the field the way a heavily circulated piece would. The letters in Liberty are still readable and bold, and the date stands crisp without distortion. That's what a true fine condition coin should look like: balanced wear, destruction. But now, let's talk about the part that makes 1979 quiet giant. The 1979 Kennedy half dollar is one of the hardest late 1970s dates to find in high grade. It's not rare in general, but high-quality surviving pieces? Those are extremely limited. Millions were minted, yes, but the number that survived without deep scratches, rim damage, or heavy wear is surprisingly tiny, and the scarcity builds value fast. A normal circulated 1979 half dollar might only bring 50 cents to a dollar. A fine example like yours can reach $3, $5, maybe $8 depending on eye appeal. But here's where it gets spicy. Jump to extra fine, and now they begin selling for $15, $25, even $40. And when a truly beautiful uncirculated piece shows up, collectors start bidding aggressively. These high-end 1979 examples can reach $75, $150, even up to $300 for strong luster and clean surfaces. But the real shock comes from the certified gems. High-grade Ms. 66 pieces have broken $1,500. Ms. 67 examples have soared past $5,000. And the ultra-rare Ms. 68 survivors? Those can hit $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000, because only a tiny handful exist. And experts believe that if a perfect Ms. 69 ever appears, and some believe one is out there, it could explode past $50,000 to $75,000. Simply because the 1979 date has one of the toughest strike qualities of the entire clad era. But wait. The true monsters for 1979 are the error coins. And this year produced some absolute shockers. Off-center strikes can bring $800 to $2,000. Double-struck pieces often sell in the $3,000 to $10,000 range. And then there are the dramatic wrong planchet errors. 1979 have struck on quarter planchets, nickel planchets, or thin foreign blanks. These are so rare they hit $25,000, $50,000, even into the six-figure range if the coin is clean, dramatic, and certified. One of the biggest finds from 1979 was a Kennedy half struck on a thin aluminum foreign blank, so lightweight, it almost felt fake. That coin pulled enormous attention because it wasn't supposed to exist. And if another one like that ever appears, collectors estimate it could break $150,000 or more, easily. So when you hold a 1979 Kennedy half dollar in fine condition, don't underestimate it. It's a survivor from one of the hardest wear years, a coin that beat the odds just to remain identifiable and attractive. And while the fine grade won't break auction records, it gives collectors a chance to check for the real prize, errors, missed strikes, rare planchets, and any clue that your coin may not be ordinary after all. And now, let's move to a year that sits quietly in the middle of the Kennedy series, a date most collectors walk right past without even blinking. But trust me, once you hear the real story behind the 1980 Kennedy half dollar, especially in fine condition like the one we're examining now, you'll never look at this year the same way again. Because 1980 is one of those sneaky dates that hides its value deep beneath the surface. And when collectors discover what's really going on, the shock hits hard. Let's start with the history. The early 1980s were a chaotic time for U.S. coin production. A massive coin shortage hit the country between 1979 and 1981. Forcing the U.S. Mint to pump out coins at an incredible speed. And when production speeds up, mistakes happen. Strikes become weak. Planchets get rushed. Quality control drops. It was the perfect storm that created one of the most inconsistent, unpredictable years of Kennedy half-dollar minting. That's why so many 1980 half-dollars look terrible today. Flattened rims, smoothed-out hairlines, dull surfaces. Most were beaten up by casino machines, bus fare boxes, vending machines, and armored car routes. Finding one in fine condition, where Kennedy's profile is still complete, the cheek has visible curve, the jawline remains strong, and the hairline above the ear retains separation. That already sets your coin above the crowd. But what collectors love most about the 1980 half dollar is the unexpected value it carries in higher grades. A typical circulated piece might sell for 50 cents to $1. A fine example like yours can bring $3, $5, maybe $10 depending on overall appearance. But the jump from fine to extra fine is huge. That's where values climb to $15, $25, $40, sometimes more if the luster is still alive. Now here's where the wow factor hits. Because despite how common these coins appear, true and circulated 1980 Kennedy halves are harder to find than people think. The Mint released nearly all of them into circulation. Very few were set aside. That's why misgraded pieces get expensive fast. Strong uncirculated examples can hit $75, $150, even $250. Ms. 66 coins have reached $750 to $1,500. And Ms. 67 examples, the best of the best, can soar into $3,000, $5,000, even $8,000 depending on eye appeal. Experts believe a perfect Ms. 68, if one ever appears, could break $20,000 to $35,000. Because so far, almost none have survived with perfect strike, perfect surfaces, and full original luster. But we're not done yet, because the real treasures from 1980, the coins that send collectors into full shock, are the mint errors. The rushed minting conditions of the era created some of the strangest and most dramatic mistakes in the entire Kennedy series. Off-center strikes with 30-40 missing design? Those can pull $1,500 to $4,000. Double-struck pieces with overlapping images? That's $5,000 to $12,000 depending on severity. Broad strikes and die adjustment strikes where the rim disappears and the design spreads wide easily reach $2,000 to $7,000. But the rarest error from 1980, the one collectors dream of, is the wrong planchet strike. A 1980 Kennedy $50 minted accidentally on a quarter blank, or a foreign planchet can rocket into $50,000, $75,000, even up to six figures, if certified and dramatic. There's even a rumor whispered among error collectors of a 1980 $50 struck on a copper nickel layer fragment. If that coin ever surfaces, experts believe it could smash past $150,000 due to its extreme rarity. So when you hold a 1980 Kennedy $50 in fine condition, you're holding a survivor from one of the most chaotic minting periods in modern history. Even in this grade, it gives collectors a chance to examine every detail for signs of unusual striking pressure, planchet irregularities, or hidden errors that could multiply its value beyond anything expected.